Please rise while the colors are posted.
Ready? Hold. Right there. Push. Collar.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for our opening prayer. Joel Abelove will lead us in prayer.
Almighty God, you are the source of our life, strength, and purpose. In your presence alone, we find help, hope, and life. Guide us during this hour of fellowship and reflection to be grounded with a healing reminder of your love to all whose lives we touch this day. For it is in your glory we gather and offer our prayers. Amen.
Amen. Please be seated. Good morning. I'm Peter K. Goebel, the Director of the Rensselaer County Veterans Service Agency. We have gathered here this morning to honor two deceased Rensselaer County veterans for the month of February, and those veterans are John C. Simonik Sr. and Edward J. Simonik Sr. We are honored to have with us this morning their family members. For John Simonik Sr., Joseph Simonik, his son, Betty Simonik, his daughter-in-law, Mike Stallmer and Kathy Stallmer, his daughter-in-law's sister, and her husband. And for Edward Simonik Sr., Edward Simonik Jr., his son, Sharon Simonik, his daughter-in-law, Teresa Pade, daughter, John Pade, son-in-law, and Audrey Pade, granddaughter. Thank you all for being here. Also with us today to honor our Veteran of the Month are representing Congressman Paul Tonko, Colleen Williams, representing Congressman Antonio Delgado, Nicholas Becker, former Congressman Michael McNulty, New York State Assemblyman Jake Ashby, Rensselaer County Executive Steve McLaughlin, Rensselaer County Legislative Vice Chairwoman Kelly Hoffman, representing Rensselaer County District Attorney Mary Pat Donnelly, her Chief of Staff Susan Mullen Califut, and representing the Commander of the Watervliet Arsenal, Colonel Milton Kelly. Also legislators Carol Weaver, Mark Fleming, and Tom Grant. As we are all well aware, Memorial Day and Veterans Day are special days to remember all of our veterans. This program was created to help us honor our veterans all year round. To us here in Rensselaer County, every day is Veterans Day. The Rensselaer County Honor Deceased Veteran Program represents veterans organizations throughout the entire county. This includes members of the American Legion, Disabled American Veterans, Veterans of Lansingburg, Military Order of the Purple Heart, Marine Corps League, Veterans of Foreign Wars, Korean War Veterans, Tri-County Council of Vietnam-era Veterans, Heroes at Home, Combat Veterans Motorcycle Association, Vietnam Veterans of America, AMVETS, and the Rensselaer County Veterans Service Agency. I will now ask Kelly Hoffman, Rensselaer County Legislative Vice Chairwoman, to come forward to tell us about our honored veterans for the month of February John C. Simonik Sr., and Edward J. Simonik Sr.
Good morning, everyone. This also gives me a great opportunity to thank Pete for all the good work that he does in putting this ceremony together. And I would also like to acknowledge Mike McNulty in the back, who I had the honor of working with many years ago in the Assembly. Thanks, Mike, for always being here. As Pete said, I'm Kelly Hoffman. I'm the Vice Chair of the Rensselaer County Legislature, and today it is my honor to fill in for our Chairman, Mike Stammel, at this morning's Honor a Deceased Veteran ceremony. Today we recognize the life and service of the Simonik brothers of Troy. John and Edward were born in Plainville, Connecticut, and came to Troy at a very young age. Their parents, Wallace and Catherine, also had one daughter, Teresia, and another son, Wallace. John was born on June 25, 1925, and attended Troy Public Schools, and went on to work as a machine operator at Bear Manning after completing his education. On October 10, 1943, John enlisted in the United States Army and was sent to Camp Upton, New York. Private Simonik arrived in the European Theater on May 18, 1944, as part of Company 1, 351st Infantry, 88th Infantry Division, and served as a light mortar crewman. During his service, John participated in the Rome-Arno campaign, the North Apennines campaign, and the Po Valley campaign in northern Italy. John saw many intense battles during his service, and during that time, over 6,000 men from his 88th Infantry Division, known as the Blue Devils, were either killed, wounded, or went missing. John became the recipient of the Purple Heart with one oak leaf cluster after being wounded twice during his time in service, once at Mount Grande and the other at Castel del Rio. He also received the European African Middle Eastern Theater Ribbon with 3 Bronze Stars, the Good Conduct Medal, the Combat Infantry Badge, and the World War II Victory Medal. John was honorably discharged on November 7, 1945. When he returned home from war, John began a 36-year career at Niagara Mohawk. On May 1, 1948, John married Joyce Ann Wetzel at Sacred Heart Church in Troy. They had 2 sons, John Jr. and Joseph. John was a communicant of Sacred Heart Church in Troy and was an active member of the 25-year Club of Niagara Mohawk. John was also a life member of the Gearholt Rem VFW Post and North Greenbush American Legion Post, both in Winenskill. In his spare time, John enjoyed reading, shooting darts, playing cards, and participating in church and veterans activities. Sadly, on February 13, 1984, John passed away, leaving behind his sons John Jr. and Joseph, his dad Wallace, his brothers Wallace and Edward, and his grandchildren Joseph and Stephanie. John was predeceased by his mother Catherine and his sister Teresia. John is buried at St. Joseph Cemetery in Troy. John's younger brother Edward was born on March 25, 1928. He attended Sacred Heart School and Troy High School, and after graduation, went to work at the Watervliet Arsenal. On May 18, 1945, Edward enrolled in the United States Merchant Marine in New York, New York. On September 1, 1945, Edward graduated from the United States Maritime Service Training Station at Sheepshead Bay, New York. And he shipped out for the next 6 months, where he served on foreign and intercoastal voyages above the NYU Victory, the Texarkana victory, and the Amarillo victory as a fireman, water tender, and oiler. For his active service during these voyages, Edward earned the Atlantic War Zone Bar. Edward left his service in the United States Merchant Marine and then enlisted in the United States Marine Corps on April 30th, 1946 in Albany. Edward attended the Naval Air Technical Training Center in Memphis, Tennessee, for training as an aircraft mechanic. Edward served in this capacity until his honorable discharge on June 15, 1947, at the New York Naval Shipyard in Brooklyn, New York. For his honorable service to his country, Edward was awarded the Rifle Sharpshooter Badge, the Honorable Service Lapel Pin, and the Honorable Discharge Button. After returning home from service, like his brother, Edward began a 40-year career at Niagara Mohawk. On April 17, 1949, Edward married his wife, the late Betty Jane Davis, at St. Augustine's Church in Troy. Edward was the father of one daughter, Catherine, and one son, Edward Jr. Edward was the communicant of Sacred Heart Church in Troy. He was a member of the 25-year Club of Niagara Mohawk, like his brother, the Brunswick Elks, the Casiuna Lake Association, and the American Legion Wine and Skill Post. In his spare time, Edward enjoyed fishing, hunting, and building projects. Edward passed away on October 16, 2005, leaving behind his daughter Catherine and her husband John, his son Edward, and his wife Sharon, and their granddaughter Audrey. Edward was predeceased by his wife Betty Jane, his parents Wallace and Catherine, his sister Teresa, his brothers Wallace and John. Edward is buried at St. Mary's Cemetery in Troy. Today we are honored to celebrate the life and service of these two brothers who answered our great nation's call to service during World War II. They were two examples of what we call our greatest generation, and we are truly honored to be able to recognize their service this morning. I want to say a special thank you to all of the family members that have allowed us to share their stories of not just one son or one brother, but two. Thank you very much.
I will now ask Colleen Williams, representing Congressman Paul Tonko, and Nicholas Becker, representing Congressman Antonio Delgado, to come forward.
Thank you, Peter. And good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you. It's always it's a wonderful occasion to join during our monthly honor vet ceremony here in Rensselaer County. Peter, to you and Lonnie, thank you for all the work you do on behalf of our veterans in Rensselaer County. We hear nothing but great things through the Congressman's office, and it's a valued partnership and friendship. So thank you for all you do. To Congressman McNulty, thank you so much for beginning this tradition that we've carried on not only here in Rensselaer County, but in Albany County, as well as Saratoga and Schenectady County has also begun an honor vet tradition. So thank you for that. It's a fantastic legacy, just one piece of your legacy, so thank you. To our elected officials here this morning, thank you for your service to our community. We appreciate that immensely, and most importantly, to the Simonik family. It is such a pleasure as the daughter of a veteran myself to be here with you to honor not only one veteran, but two in your family. You must be so proud to have that tradition in your family, and it's evident that tradition has carried on with within your family. So Congressman Tonko regrets that he couldn't be here this morning. He is traveling down to Washington, D.C. for legislative business, but he asked that I come here today on his behalf to extend his gratitude and his appreciation for the service of John and Edward. And in that same vein, he has asked that 2 flags be flown over our Capitol, and I have a couple of letters here for you today. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I am going to read a piece of it that I think truly speaks to the service of John and Edward. It says here, I arranged for an American flag to be flown over the Capitol building in Washington. The flag symbolizes in part the vigilance, perseverance, and valor required to establish and sustain our democratic republic, a place where justice and opportunity may be pursued in peace. And it's very clear that both John and Edward were a piece of that mission for pursuing peace and democracy. So with that, I would appreciate the opportunity to present this flag to you this morning. Thank you again. We are immensely grateful for both John and Edward's service. Thank you.
I will now ask our Rensselaer County Executive Steve McLaughlin to come forward.
Good morning, and it's a pleasure to be here with everyone this morning, my colleagues in government at federal, state, local level, and just want to acknowledge Colonel Kelly, our commander of the Arsenal over there, a huge part of this area, and Tom Walsh, our former Veterans Chairman here in the county legislature as well as Congressman McNulty. These, as has been mentioned, these ceremonies have spread, and I believe it started here in Rensselaer County with Congressman McNulty a while ago. So other counties are thankfully recognizing our veterans in the same way we do. So it's great to see that. It's a great legacy, as Colleen said. And as Kelly read that bio of these 2 great brothers, they seem like they must have been very, very close, right? They kind of same career, same military, same type of military service, a little bit different there, one on ships, one on land, but then came home, National Grid, Sacred Heart, Brunswick Elks. It reads like a bio of the quintessential Rensselaer County guys with hunting and fishing and everything else. So we are very proud to be able to honor them today and thank them for their service. And it's interesting as I read these, it's the same story all the time, guys that went off into war or service and came back and raised a family and just did their thing and never probably said much about their military service. And these two gentlemen are about the same vintage as my dad, right around, he was born in 27, so right in between there. So it's interesting, I kind of think back to what he was doing. He never mentioned much about what he did in the service either. So, but certainly part of the greatest generation, and thank you for letting us honor them today. Thank you.
I will now ask former Rensselaer County Legislative Veterans Committee Chairman Tom Walsh and the assembled county legislators to come forward.
Good morning, and especially to the family of John and Edward. It's always a pleasure for me to come and do this ceremony, and I kind of missed it when I'm not a legislator anymore, but I thank Ken Harrington when he can't make it here, I stand in for him. And I want to recognize some of the people here. I do know some of the family here, which is, it's always good to represent the persons being honored. It is especially good today that we're honoring two brothers that served during World War II, and we're losing our World War II veterans so fast now. I don't think there isn't that many left, except that the house that, or the home that I lived in before I moved a couple of weeks ago, there was a gentleman there. He's 98 years old and he served in World War II. And there was another one there, he was 93 years old and he was in the Navy. The other one was in the Army. So it's still good to see that they're still around and kicking. John, he was a mortarman, and he actually probably could have been firing mortars that were made by his brother Edward when he worked at the arsenal, because we made mortars at the arsenal. As the commander of the arsenal can affirm that they do make quite a few mortars over there and cannon, and it's always good to honor somebody that worked at the arsenal. Even though he went to work at the electric company after the war, but at least he started off right. When you come in, you pass through our Hall of Heroes out there. We honor 14 Medal of Honor winners out there from Rensselaer County. And on the wall on the left is all our deceased veterans that we've honored over the past years. And Edward and John will be on a plaque next year that will be presented here again, and you'll be invited back here when they do that presentation here. Right now I have two proclamations to present to the family, signed by the chairman, Michael Stammel, and I'd like to present that to you at this time, and if the other legislators would come with me.
I will now ask New York State Assemblyman Jake Ashby and New York State Assemblyman John McDonald III to come forward.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here this morning, and you know, I apologize. I was a little distracted reading over the bios of Edward and John, and what an incredible story. What an incredible story, and you know, Mr. Walsh is absolutely right. I was thinking the exact same thing of how at his time at the arsenal he could have been using the mortars that were made there, and I always chuckle when I read a light mortar crewman. There's not much light going on in terms of being a mortarman. You know, the base plates that they have to carry and everything else, and the distance that they had to travel. Reading, and I was looking it up on my phone, the distances that they traveled in Italy from one place to another, the Orsina Valley to the Po Valley, and all of the fighting that they went through. They lost 6,000 men in 4 months, wounded, killed, or missing in action. And so I'm just trying to think about what that must have been like during that time. And then his brother, working as in the Marine Corps as an aircraft mechanic, then thinking about, you know, how he must need to do things right in order to support guys like his brother, you know, being on the ground. You know, my time spent with mortarmen, I actually lived next to the mortar pit when I was deployed, which was an interesting time. A lot of alarms, right? But they also did some really good things in terms of remembering our soldiers, in terms of illumination rounds when we lost guys. And you know, that was so meaningful to guys like me and everybody else, to know that we had those guys looking out for us on the high ground and where we couldn't see them. And then to come home and live the lives that they did after going through all of that, you know, it speaks to the heroes that we have here in Rensselaer County. County executive is absolutely right in that there's a story and these legacies nearly every time in terms of service to the community and their families and the hardships that they endured while they were away and the example that they set for future generations. And so it's just a privilege and an honor to be here today. So on behalf of the New York State Assembly and my colleague John McDonald, I'd like to present you with some citations.
Tim Forbes from the Rensselaer County Honor Deceased Veteran Committee will now present the committee plaque. Will the committee members please stand?
On behalf of the Honor Deceased Veteran Committee, the citizens of Rensselaer County and the veterans here assembled, please accept these plaques as a symbol of our appreciation for your loved ones' faithful service. Your dad, Brother Mike, thank you very much.
Please stand for the closing prayer.
Day is done, gone the sun, from the lake, the hill, and the sky. All is well. God of compassion, dignity, and strength, watch over these veterans and their families. Bless them and grant their families comfort and everlasting peace. Amen.
Amen. Continue standing. Alice.
Retire the colors.
Ready. Go. Retrieve colors. Right face. Going right. Forward. Left.
This concludes our Honor Vet ceremony for this month. Thank you for coming to honor our deceased veterans for the month of February, John C. Simonik Sr. and Edward J. Simonik Sr. Please join us for our next Honor of Veterans ceremony scheduled for March 11th. Before we go our separate ways, we'll take a few family photos. The flag will be raised at a different time and will be presented later. Thank you again.